During the course of the season, your crops will face several challenges before harvest time arrives. How your crops are able to handle these challenges will determine the kind of yield you get at the end of the season. Among the challenges your groundnut, cowpea, and soybean crops can face are pests, drought, diseases, weeds, etc. In this message, we are going to focus on weeds and the practices that can help manage them to reduce the negative impacts they have on your crops. Other messages will talk about the other challenges and how to address them accordingly. After sowing seeds on your field, it does not take long before you see that it's not only your crops that are growing on the farm, but weeds too. Weeds come in different sizes and types, but they all cause harm to your crops. It is therefore very important to learn how to effectively control them to ensure that they do not harm your crops and reduce your harvest. For weeds to establish on your field, they need a few factors to thrive. Like all other crops, they will need space, moisture, and nutrients to grow. But unlike most cultivated crops, they are much more resilient and tolerant to less than favorable conditions. This means that if they are allowed to coexist with the soybean, cowpea, and groundnut crops, your crops will be overcome. This is the reason why weed control measures have to always be timely. In cultivating groundnut, cowpea, or soybean, you have an advantage over the other kind of crops. If you use the recommended planting distances, you will be able to considerably reduce the amount of space available between crops for weeds to be established. Weeding activities are very critical in the early stages when your crops have not yet formed a canopy to suppress the growth of the weeds. Weeding should therefore be done regularly from the second week after planting until the canopies are formed. Weeding should be done with hoes and not cutlasses to reduce the damage to the crops. Another method of controlling weeds on your farm is through the use of chemicals. You can apply pre-emergence weedicides before planting or immediately after planting before any weeds appear on your field. With pre-emergence weedicides, you will not need to weed your farm regularly because by the time the chemical wears out on your field to allow seeds to germinate, your crops would have established a canopy, which will make it very difficult for weeds to grow. If you decide to use post-emergence weedicides to control weeds on your farm, ask your CEA or input dealer for brands of selective weedicides. These kinds of weedicides will only kill the weeds and will not cause any damage to your groundnut, cowpea, or soy plants. Weeds crowd our well-spaced crops and prevent them from getting enough water and nutrients from the soil. Some types of weeds send their roots into the roots of crop plants and rob them of their food, resulting in very poor growth and development. Weeds may also carry diseases and pests that cause harm to your plants. In total, you can weed your farm about twice before the plants form a canopy and suppress the growth of weeds on their own. The first weeding can be done in 2 or 3 weeks after sowing, with the second one in another 2 or 3 weeks after the first weeding. Remember that all weeding activities must be timely to minimize competition and avoid irreversible damage to your crops. Chemical weed control saves time and involves less labor costs. However, if you cannot afford to buy weedicides to fight the weeds on your field, make sure you carry out your manual weeding safely without causing any damage to the crops in the process. By properly controlling the weeds on your field, you would have removed one of the challenges faced by your crops in achieving a good yield. There will be other messages on pest management and water management, which will also address the other challenges. Thank you.